President Trump is lashing out at Vladimir Putin again today while issuing new threats against the Kremlin. Just moments ago in a social media post, he wrote, "What Putin doesn't realize is that if it weren't for me, lots of really bad things would have already happened to Russia. And I mean really bad. He's playing with fire." Sources tell CNN the president is now considering new sanctions on Moscow as he grows more frustrated over the Kremlin's escalating attacks on Ukraine. This is happening after another wave of Russian strikes overnight. They pounded numerous parts of the country, and Ukrainian officials say at least 2 people were killed and 16 were wounded. In the meantime, Moscow is blasting a decision by Germany and other Ukrainian allies, including the U.S., to lift a ban on firing long-range missiles into Russia. That's a move that allows Ukraine to strike military targets that are much deeper inside of Russia. It's a decision that the Kremlin is calling dangerous. CNN's Elena Treen is with us now from the White House. Elena, what are you learning about Trump's growing frustration with Putin?
Yeah, it's clear, Brianna, there really has been a shift in tone and rhetoric and also just private frustrations that the president is feeling when it relates to Russians, specifically Russian President Vladimir Putin. Look, I think it's clear that the president has so far been hesitant to put any sort of sanctions and pressure of sanctions and economic pressure really on Russia through this entire process, because privately he's noted that he believes that doing so could actually push Russia farther away from the negotiating table. Thus far, he's really been trying to do as much as he can to fulfill his campaign promise of bringing both Russia and Ukraine together to find some sort of off-ramp to this war and ultimately a ceasefire. But increasingly, both he and his closest advisors are recognizing that perhaps Putin is not necessarily living up to what he's been telling Trump behind closed doors. And people are growing increasingly unsure of whether or not he's actually ready to strike some real sort of deal to end this war with Ukraine. Because of that, we're learning now behind the scenes that he is considering potentially wanting to place sanctions on Russia and try to kind of up the ante with them and show President Putin that he's very serious about this. Of course, this comes as we know that many of the United States' European allies and even some people here in the United States, people like Senator Lindsey Graham, have really been pressuring and trying to influence this administration to do just that, to put sanctions on Russia and try to force their hand. Now, I do think it's very interesting to see how the president has been talking about these most recent attacks from Russia on Ukraine, because the way that the president put it, particularly in that Truth Social post today when he said, Putin doesn't realize that if it weren't for me, lots of really bad things would have already happened to Russia. He's saying that he thinks Putin has gone crazy. He said that this weekend in a separate post. I mean, it's clear that the president is starting to kind of lose patience with Russia. And I know from my conversations with several Trump administration officials that he really did believe that he would be able to make more progress at this point, just so many months now into his second term. And so really, I think the next few days are going to be pretty critical to learning whether or not the president is actually going to move forward and try to put this pressure of sanctions on Russia, or if he'll continue to kind of wait and see if he can still try to get any sort of deal with both of these countries to come together for an ultimate ceasefire. Brianna.
Elena Treen live for us at the White House. Thank you. Boris?
Let's talk about these latest developments with retired General Wesley Clark. He's a former NATO Supreme Allied Commander. General Clark, great to see you as always. With these stepped up attacks over recent days, what would you say is Russia's immediate objective on the battlefield?
Russia's main objective is to continue to pressure, try to break the government of Ukraine, break the will of the people to continue to resist. At the same time, it's pushing very hard in the north, in the center, and the ultimate objective, of course, is in the south to sweep across the coast of the Black Sea and take Odessa. And that's what their objective would be for, let's say, September, October, if they are successful in breaking through Ukrainian lines and drawing off the reserves into the north.
What would you say are the practical implications of having Germany and other Ukrainian allies lift these restrictions on Kyiv to fire long-range missiles into Russia for the first time? Could that slow down the Russian advance?
I think the lifting of the restrictions is an important signal psychologically. I think it's also marginally important, provided the United States is providing the intelligence to accurately target these long-range strikes. How many they are, what the inventory is, and what the impact it remains to be seen. But the way to make a greater impact is to surge more U.S. artillery in, small arms, and the other items that Ukraine desperately needs right now.
The administration so far has floated the idea of additional sanctions, and there is a bipartisan bill in the Senate proposing a 500% tariff on any country that is buying Russian energy right now. Do you see that financial disincentive as enough to sway Vladimir Putin toward the negotiating table?
Seems unlikely that that kind of a tariff can go in and go in effectively against countries like India and Gulf states who are involved in directly or indirectly in the Russian oil trade. But it's an important step, and it's very important for the president at this point, after 5 to 6 weeks of expressing frustration and threatening sanctions, to move ahead and do something. So whether it's that particular set of sanctions or something else, it's very important at this time that he take concrete action. This is not going to harm the prospect of negotiations. It's going to incentivize them.
You mentioned bolstering Ukraine's ability to defend itself. I wonder, when you hear that Ukraine's air defenses overnight intercepted 43 Russian drones and other unmanned aerial vehicles, what is Ukraine's current aerial defense capacity? How long can they sustain that kind of defense before needing extra ammunition?
Well, they need it. They need it right now. First of all, they need additional Patriot missiles, and they need a couple of more Patriot batteries to go in to protect. But what's happening is the Russian drones are getting more sophisticated. They're sending in decoy drones. The Shaheeds are flying higher. They have different guidance systems, so they're not as easily jammed. So all of this demands a response by Ukraine. Some of the response is different artillery systems directed against the drones, using the F-16s and other aircraft more effectively against the drones. More Patriot, IRIS-T, and other anti-aircraft missile systems from our allies can be sent in. But the point is, it's a dynamic battlefield. And Mr. Putin hasn't slacked off. He's doing everything he can, I think, to intensify this, while at the same time posturing forces to be prepared to go into Belarus, through Belarus, and into Lithuania or northeast Poland by autumn. That's the threat.
Wow. General Wesley Clark, always great to get your point of view. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.